Hey, so a while back, CERN Central made an excellent video about the best anti-tank options of E3. This is not a response, but let me take you to my PowerPoint. So these are my top 10 anti-tank weapons of bolt action V3. The disclaimers are this is inspired by CERN Central's video, but where he does a lot of math, I'm not doing any of that. And I'm not limiting myself to what he did, the best AT options for infantry. Nah, I'm not doing that. I'm also not limiting myself to the idea of taking out tanks, because that's not what I'm seeing people actually try to do. What I am doing is I'm going to tell you what people are actually taking to tournaments, what is used in actual games, because I see a bunch of tournaments, I see a bunch of tournament lists, so I more or less know what it is that people are taking to tournaments. So my question is not what's the mathematically best way to take out a tank in bolt action. My question is, if you go to a competitive tournament, what are your vehicles likely to be shot by? That is my top 10. And at number 10, infantry assaults. So not actually a shot, but they do happen. Infantry assaults happen because it's one of the ways that you can try and deal with a tank. And there are other benefits as well to doing infantry assaults. It is costly in men, especially if the tank has yet to activate, because it'll do defensive fire. So, which is bad, right? You're going to lose guys. But if it has already shot, then it's a perfect target for an infantry assault. Will you be able to do stuff to it? Most likely not. It is somewhat likely that you'll fail to do the order test because of the tank fear rule. It's also somewhat likely that if you do get to go there, that the tank has already moved and you're only hitting on sixes. And even if it hasn't moved, it's just sitting there waiting for you to assault it. It's 4 pluses. It's not very likely that you'll do anything other than maybe give it a glance of some sort, which is very, very unlikely to kill a tank. However, it is an available anti-tank option because most of us have infantry, right? Most of us don't have infantry to spare, but we do have infantry available, so it can happen, and it does happen. It can also be boosted significantly if you buy anti-tank grenades, but that's one of the reasons why I haven't really put anti-tank grenades into my list here. CERN Central does. He does talk about anti-tank grenades. I don't have it on my top 10 because anti-tank grenades are so rarely taken unless something happens to boost their effectiveness. Very, very rarely are they taken. So you're not really going to be dealing with anti-tank grenades that will kill your tanks, right? Because they will absolutely kill your tanks if the infantry connects. The infantry is, of course, semi-survivable. Yes, you might be throwing good infantry away at trying to kill a tank, but if you don't need the infantry, okay. And you're very likely to lose guys. But it is fairly good for doing something else. You want your infantry up in the center of the board, or further into the enemy's lines. Well, why not make the 12-inch charge and then take the D6 consolidation move? That's pretty far you can move. Plus, once your unit connects, you're going to have to try and get as many of the guys to connect, so you might gain a couple of inches as well. I mean, that's pretty good for moving infantry forward if you can get it to go, right? So it has other benefits than actually trying to kill your tank, although it will, of course, try to damage the tank. The main problem for infantry assaults is, of course, that it has only one role. It is quite often, if you're not boosted by AT grenades, only able to do superficial damage, and your penetration value is whatever you get from how many guys actually hit the tank, right? So it's pretty unlikely to do anything, and it's very, very much something that you can't rely on. It also has very limited range, 12-inch range for infantry, right? Or 18 if you're charging with cavalry. You should never charge tanks with cavalry. So that's why it's my number 10. It does happen. I've seen it in most tournaments I've been to, but it's very ineffective. Number 9 is the Bazooka PIAT teams. I'm lumping these in together because they fulfill the same role, just for different armies, basically. These are priced okay-ish. At 60 points for a bazooka, 40 points for a PIAT. It's not prohibitively expensive to buy one of these. And they are the best at their range band, right? The bazooka at 24-inch range is absolutely the best you can do at that price cap, right? However, with that power level, by the way, because it can take out tank, as can the PIAT. However, I question whether or not the range really matters for these. 24 inches, if you're exposing your two-man teams at 24 inches, these are typically going to be regulars, by the way. You move out, you take a shot, that'll be a 5+ to hit. You're most likely not hitting that, right? That's a third of the time that you're hitting. So you're most likely not hitting, but then your two-man team are exposed to all the enemy fire that they can pour into you, and you're at 24 inches to a tank. You're pretty likely to be dead, right? So they are not survivable. And the range maybe does not matter, because the way that people then most likely use them is they will use them either from outflank or reserve, and then bring them on via a jeep or something cheap, like a cheap transport, right? That will move the Bazooka PIAT in and possibly push it like way into point blank, where they are more effective, right? Because they have a higher chance of hitting. 2/3. So the range really doesn't matter, but you're still paying for it, right? And that's why the Bazooka PIAT combo falls down in my estimation, because it's not an optimized way of spending your points. It does have a very good armor penetration, only got one shot though, and you don't really gain anything from you don't lose anything from being more than at half range, because you've got shaped charge. But then you do gain something from being at point blank, which is good, right? So the range, it doesn't happen that much. But there are players who will take these, and in numbers, and that's why we are seeing this as a thing that could potentially happen to you in a tournament. So number 9. Number 8, the light AT gun. The light AT gun is okay costed for an artillery piece, 50 points. But it's even better if you get it in a versatile howitzer, right? If you take it in a versatile howitzer, that is very, very likely to be very, very good for you. Sorry, I just have to check something. Right, we are the right way. Because your howitzer can go and shoot at infantry. If you want to switch because it's a tank coming at you, you can do that. That's pretty good. Sometimes you can even get them on 360 platforms, which is even better, especially for going on ambush. And you can also get them quite often on very cheap vehicles, which is where most people will bring them. They'll not bring them as much on in artillery platoons, although I think that there could be something there for the points, right? but they will bring them on cheap vehicles, which can often get wrecky, which makes them more survivable. So the armored cars, many of these have access to having light AT guns. At +4 penetration, HE1 one shot, it's pretty okay. But you are dependent on that one shot hitting. If you're not hitting, then it becomes a little dicey. Some armored cars, I've seen that done quite a lot, will try to move into point blank range where they're more likely to hit, and their AP goes up to 5, which is a dangerous place to be for a lightly armored vehicle, right? But it is being done. The range is okay. It's not great, especially because often you'll be shooting at above 24 inches, which is the halfway point. So you'll be shooting at +3 instead of +4, which isn't great, but it's okay. I think the main detriment here is that they're shooting with HE1, so they are not very dangerous to infantry at all. With one shot HE1, infantry will most likely just ignore you. And that's why we're not seeing that many light AT guns being brought. Mostly they're being brought on other platforms that have machine guns, that they are more likely to fire the machine guns instead of the AT gun. Number 7 is the medium AT gun. This for me is a lot more dangerous, and it is also something that I'm seeing more and more people bringing, and I could actually lump in certain versions of the heavy AT gun here. It is too expensive to buy as an artillery piece. 70 points is just overly expensive for something that's just going to sit there and most likely be shot at by a light mortar. But you can get it on vehicles. And there are some vehicles where it becomes especially interesting. The Panzer IIIs. Take a medium AT gun along with all the dark air you can put on the Panzer, and you got a versatile platform that's very dangerous to other enemy vehicles and is really dangerous to infantry as well. That's a good combo. That works. The Lee, for instance, which has both a light AT gun and a medium AT gun, pretty dangerous to enemy vehicles, right? The Chaffee, which has recce and is fast, has a medium AT gun. Really dangerous as a tank hunter, basically. So there are platforms on which this is really useful, and these platforms are being taken to tournaments. This is, for me, one of the heaviest, most dangerous guns to be shot at, which is why you'll see a lot of people bring stuff that has recce, because they don't want to be shot by a medium AT gun. That +5 with a very good range and is just it's very dangerous, especially because it's also an AT gun. So if you're just using a fire order, you're shooting at a 3+, not 4+, which makes it very, very likely to hit, right? Is again not very likely to be dangerous to infantry, but most of the platforms where you can take it do have other weapon systems as well, so not a massive problem. So medium AT guns, yeah, you have to find a way to deal with those. They're not going to be in every army you face, but they are going to be in like 25-30% of the armies will have maybe one. So they are there, and they are a factor to deal into your thought process. Number 6, the anti-tank rifle. These are everywhere. These are everywhere because they are so dirt cheap. 25 points for an AT rifle, 2 regular dudes. Perfect. They can also double up as snipers, and you can spam these in huge numbers if you take heavy weapons platoons. They're not even fixed, so they can move and fire. And they can be taken on vehicles, but I haven't seen it done yet. No one does. These are not survivable at all. They're two regular dudes. They have the same problem as the Bazooka team and the PIAT team, but they are so much cheaper than the other two. I mean, you can get 2 of these AT rifles for the price of 1 bazooka, right? You can almost get 3. So they are much, much cheaper. Which means spamming and, order dice in this game is typically good if you're not just throwing them away as kill points. And if you can get them into point blank, they become actually very dangerous because they've got +2 penetration, right? But at point blank, that becomes +3. Typically, you'll be in the side shots as well. That's very dangerous to a tank. However, it is difficult getting them there. So you do the same thing. I've seen most people do the same thing as they do with the PIAT or the bazookas. They put them in some sort of transport or an outflank, and then they bring them in hoping to get to point blank. Because then the annoyance that is an AT rifle sitting there plinking away, giving you a pin, becomes suddenly an existential threat. +3 in the side, most tanks cannot deal with that. So that is very dangerous. The range is actually also quite good. At 48 inches range, they can shoot quite far, though typically they won't. Because again, if you're exposing them, the enemy can see you, they can shoot back, and you're in danger, right? So typically they'll just sit, be on ambush, go down, maybe shoot at the end of the turn if something presents itself for a pin, maybe. But if a soft skin vehicle or a light transport, something that can't really shoot back, comes out, yeah, they'll take the shot. Or you'll see them in outflank. Number 5 is the light mortar. This is again a weapon of availability. The light mortars are dirt cheap at 21 points. You can spam them out. You can have multiple, even in rifle platoons. They're much better for the points than other mortars because you can move and fire. You're not just sitting there shooting, which means that for the price of 1 medium mortar regular with a spotter, you can actually take almost 3 of these, right? So they're just so much better for the points. However, they're not very killy, right? They really don't do much. They have crap penetration, but they are quite good against open top vehicles because you can have so many of them. You're very much more likely to hit. And that open top bonus of +1 to damage. So the damage roll, you get a +1 on the damage roll. That's actually quite good. Even though you only have AP1, it's quite good. They're also not fixed, which other mortars suffer from. So you can, sit behind line of sight blocking cover. As soon as something has moved and you're pretty sure nothing can shoot at you, you move the light mortar up. They'll take a shot. If you don't hit, okay, you'll get one more chance next turn to maybe get the first dice and take the shot again. It's just for 21 points. Yeah, that's a no-brainer. It's such an easy choice. Yeah, they are made of tissue paper. They are so bad at surviving. But if you know how to do it, if you can save them for last in the turn, take them first in the turn, next turn, they are actually quite good for what they deliver. They only have penetration 1 because they have HE1, and it is an indirect shot. You're not very likely to hit, but they do have quite good range. They have 36-inch range, and they can move 6 inches before that. So we're at 42-inch effective range, which is fairly good. So the light mortar, I'm seeing this being used against vehicles quite a lot. People will take the shot and hope for the best, and it quite often works. In World Open War, I lost 2 Nimrods in one single game to light mortars. Just I'm hoping for a 6. Oh, that was a 6. So yeah, it happens. It happens quite a lot. Number 4 will be the HMGs. Now, the HMGs are the light mortars of direct fire, more or less. They are too expensive as heavy weapon choices at, what is it, 70 points? 70 points, yeah? But if you take them on vehicles at 30 points, that's a huge discount. So do that. You quite often get 360 as well on the vehicle, which is nice for, when you're just pushing around the board and you want to shoot something that cropped up behind you. Or maybe you want to shoot an airplane, right? You want to use them in flak mode, which is also good. And they're often on quite cheap-ish, medium-priced transports, which you need for other stuff, for bringing your infantry into the center of the board. They are a mobile version of an anti-tank weapon for your infantry on a platform that's quite often 7+ in armor. It's all great. Can't really be hurt by infantry. Yeah. You can give it recce. I'm seeing a lot of people do that. I don't typically do that myself to white scout cars and the like. But some people do. Some people like it. I'm just, they're disposable for me. The only +1 armor penetration can be a little bit of an issue. You're not expecting these to actually damage and kill vehicles. What they do is they will deliver pins, because very rarely do we see people take veteran vehicles. So even though you can't actually penetrate a vehicle, that one pin might be enough to mean that their medium AT gun won't hit next turn, right? Because if you've delivered 2 pins, then they're at -1 to hit. That's one of the things that I'm seeing a lot of people do with these. Just, deliver shots to take pins on tanks, real tanks. And they have a very, very good range at 48 inches. That is very, very good. So these will deliver the final pins to pin out a tank, to give it an extra pin so that it is absolutely pinned next turn when it activates. And I'm seeing them everywhere in the armies that can take them, which is, more or less only Lend-Lease armies, so the Allies. And number 3 is the heavy autocannon. These are actually cheap, and I'm seeing them taken as artillery pieces. They're 50 points as an artillery piece. You can give them at 55 points if they have a 360. They are much better for the points than most other artillery options, because they often have that 360. They are a very good platform for ambushes, because you can choose to go on ambush with HE or anti-tank. So you can choose your options, and they can just sit there. And because they have 2 shots, they're very likely to hit when they actually do shoot, right? Which is that reliability that most people want. And you can also get them in some armies on cheap-ish vehicles, right? So you can take them all the way up to medium tanks in some armies. The German army has them available to some medium tanks, 9+ vehicles. The Kugelblitz, Wirbelwind, stuff like that. And they are available in many nations, though not all to my knowledge. The penetration value of 3+ is really good. Though the HE1 is just, it's the same as a light mortar or light autocannon, so it's not great for something that's really designed to punch. But it is really good as an anti-tank weapon. I will quite often use, I actually used, at least I should say, in my British lists back in the day, I would use Crusader AAs heavy version. So they are open-topped 8+, and they would have one of these heavy autocannons on them. And they would be my main anti-tank weapon. Yes, I would need to go to the flanks of most tanks, but when I was there, they would shred through most things. So, and they have a very, very good range. They are very dangerous. Everyone sort of, they have to do a little bit of, ooh, that's a heavy autocannon, isn't it? Because they're just, they're pretty good. And if you get to point blank range, they're even better. So, yeah, that's my number 3. Number 2, the Panzerfaust. Now, I know the Panzerfaust was nerfed slightly. It is a little expensive at 15 points, but it is available to so many nations, and not just the Axis powers, because Soviets get them as well, right? Partisans can take them as well. So they are available in many nations. They are available to many types of units, which means that they can be everywhere. They can be spammed, and they can be split fired because it's a one-shot weapon. So your infantry doesn't need to choose between, do I fire at the tank or do I fire at the infantry right next to it? You can fire at both, which makes them an excellent anti-tank choice. However, a little expensive, right? I think perhaps they are even more than they are an excellent anti-tank choice because they are one-shot weapons. I mean, you fire them and then you're done, right? I think they're better than that as a deterrent, actually. Your infantry units having one Panzerfaust will mean that most tanks will shy away from your infantry. They won't go near it if they can avoid it. And that effect is actually better than the actual hunting with the Panzerfaust, right? Although I do see some people using, for instance, the Soviet AT teams with the Panzerfaust to go and hunt tanks. And you can do that, but it's only 2/3 of the time that Panzerfaust will hit, and then it's a little less that it'll actually penetrate and kill something, right? So it is... I think it's a much better deterrence that will keep your enemy on its toes. Like buying a single Panzerfaust is a sort of an insurance policy that will prevent enemy tanks from approaching you to point blank range or to tank shot you, because you have the Panzerfaust and you will kill it if it comes too near. With a penetration of 6, the Panzerfaust is actually very, very dangerous. And most of the time it should be used in point blank range because it has a very limited range anyway, and you don't want to waste these. Which brings us to number 1. Light autocannons. The thing that your vehicles are most likely to be shot at tournaments is light autocannons. They are dirt cheap at 35 points each. They are much better for the points than most other artillery options. You often get them with 360 in artillery platoons, and you can get them on very cheap vehicles, including soft skins, by the way, which often has recce for extra survivability. So they're on cheap platforms that are survivable. The combination is great, especially because they can affect most tanks in the game. Yeah, they can't really go head to head with a Panzer that's got 9+ armor, right? Because to the front they can't actually damage it, but they can pin it if you're not taking your Panzer veteran, right? Then, so what you'll see is most likely the light autocannons will, at range, they will shoot HE at armor. Even though they can't damage it, they'll shoot HE. Why? Because HE1 gives you D2 pins. So you can actually give it 2 pins instead of 1 if you're shooting AP. You could still not penetrate, but that's the same for both. So the option of shooting HE is actually much better at tanks. And it is available to almost I don't think there's a single nation that don't have a light autocannon. It's everywhere. And if you're buying it as an artillery piece, you get flak as well. On some of the platforms for light autocannons, you also get flak at like the cheap vehicles, but some of them are armored cars that have it as its main armament. The Humber for the Brits is a good example. The T-60 for the Soviets is another good example, right? So cheap vehicles, often with recce, brilliant. Has quite a good range for what it delivers. 48 inches is enough most of the time. So it's not great. It's not a killy weapon, but it is a weapon that will pin enemy tanks. And if it can get to point blank range, then it becomes dangerous. Just like what I talked about with the anti-tank rifle, it becomes very dangerous once you get to point blank range, especially if you can get around the side or the back of a heavier tank, which you quite often can with your light armored cars. It becomes very, very dangerous. So the thing that is most likely to shoot at and potentially deteriorate your vehicle pool is actually light autocannons. Now, there's a bunch of things that I didn't mention. And these are the honorable mentions, aka why not, whatever pet peeve you have, in this top 10. Flamers. Flamers are taken sometimes, but rarely. And if you do, then you lean into them. You take a lot of them, right? Because your whole build becomes about barbecuing. So flamers is not something that I would be worried about most of the time. Also because quite a lot of my vehicles by now I take with recce. And recce is the natural antidote to flamers. The flamer moves up, tries to shoot at you at point blank range. You move away, and the flamer runs out. That's it. Flamer's done. So flamers really doesn't work against recce vehicles. Anti-tank grenades, rarely taken, as I said before. Therefore, they are not mentioned, although, infantry assaults did an honorable mention of them there. Medium mortars, much punchier. Heavy mortars, much punchier than the light mortars. Why? Why are they not on my top 10? Well, they are much fewer in number at tournaments. Some people will lean into the medium or heavy mortars. But, I mean, just looking over the last 10 tournaments that I've covered, the light mortars to heavier mortars is at least 1 to 2 in favor of light mortars. At least 1 to 2. So it's much more unlikely that you'll ever be shot at by a medium or heavy mortar. Dog mines, they used to be the best. They used to be number 1 on my list of anti-tank options. Now, they've been nerfed, and I'm not seeing them in any of the new Soviet builds that I'm seeing after the armies of Soviet Union came out. Not a single dog mine. So they have left the chart completely. Panzerschrecks, way too expensive, and suffers from all the same deficits that the AT rifles and the bazookas and PIAT and even the light mortars. They are very vulnerable, and you have to expose them in order to shoot. What about the Sturmpistole? The Sturmpistole I've actually talked quite a lot about, and it is a great anti-tank option because it's not a one-shot one. You get them every single turn, and you're most likely in point-blank range when you're using it anyway. But nobody's taking them. Like, I would take them. Why are you not? Is it because you take them in engineer platoons? I think that is it. Because the Sturmpistole is only available to the Germans, as far as I know. And it's only on engineer units. So you have to go and invest in an engineer platoon, which most people are not doing anyway, which I think is why the Sturmpistole is not taken, because you should. It's really a great option to supplement your flamers. If you don't want to waste the flamer on a vehicle, take the Sturmpistole, pop it on point blank range. Perfect. But it's not being taken, so it's not on my top 10 list. And that is it from me today. Thank you so much, Sun Central, for the video. I enjoyed that immensely. I have linked him in below with the video. So go and watch that as well, and enjoy your day. That's it from me. Cheers.